Okay, folks, buckle up, because today we're taking a deep dive into the explosive world of volcanoes.
Explosive is right.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. Volcanoes, aren't those just, well, mountains?
Well, yeah, they are mountains, but with a fiery twist.
Right. It's like Mother Nature decided to put a fireplace inside a mountain.
And these fireplaces can pack a punch, sometimes even reshaping the planet as we know it.
Exactly. We're talking forces of nature that can wipe out entire civilizations in one breath, and in the next, well, be the reason those civilizations existed in the first place.
It's all about perspective. Take Pompeii, for instance.
Buried by Vesuvius, gone in an instant.
But now we're sipping wine grown in that volcanic soil. How wild is that?
It's mind-blowing. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of how volcanoes have shaped our world, let's break it down. Volcano 101.
Well, I love it. Let's do it.
What's happening beneath the surface that leads to these, shall we say, dramatic displays of nature's power?
Imagine this. The Earth, not as the solid thing, but a giant jigsaw puzzle. Those pieces, those are tectonic plates, and they're constantly moving, shifting, bumping against each other.
Okay, so like a slow-motion demolition derby happening beneath our feet.
Pretty much. And where those plates collide or pull apart, that's prime real estate for volcanoes.
So it's like the pressure has to escape somewhere.
Exactly. Now think of the Pacific Ring of Fire. It's this zone of intense tectonic activity and home to a crazy number of the world's volcanoes.
Right. I've heard of the Ring of Fire. Isn't that where most of the big earthquakes happen too?
You got it. It's all connected. But there's another way you get volcanoes, and those are hotspots.
Hotspots. Okay, now you're just making me hungry.
Picture a blowtorch held steadily beneath the Earth's crust. That's a hotspot, a plume of superheated magma rising from deep within the Earth. The Hawaiian Islands are a classic example.
Hawaii, with those iconic shield volcanoes.
Exactly, and they're formed by those slow, steady lava flows.
Okay, so shield volcanoes are the laid-back surfers of the volcano world.
I like that, yeah. But now imagine their more temperamental siblings, the stratovolcanoes. These are the majestic, steep-sided mountains. Think Mount Fuji or Mount Rainier.
Those are the ones that look like they're ready to blow their top at any minute.
They're known for their explosive eruptions.
So different shapes, different personalities. Are there other volcano terms our listeners should know?
Absolutely. We've got explosive eruptions like Mount Vesuvius burying Pompeii. Those are driven by trapped gas, creating those dramatic plumes of ash and rock. And then there are effusive eruptions, like in Hawaii, which are more like oozing lava flows. Still dangerous, but not as immediately catastrophic.
It's incredible how one natural phenomenon can have such different expressions. But it's not all about destruction and mayhem, right? We were talking about volcanic soil earlier. What makes it so special?
Right. Volcanic ash might seem barren, but it's packed with nutrients.
Oh, yeah.
Over time, that ash breaks down, enriching the soil and making it super fertile.
So in a way, volcanoes are like nature's gardeners.
Exactly. Think about the vineyards on the slopes of Mount Vesuvius in Italy.
Producing some of the world's best wines.
And it's all thanks to that volcano that once caused so much destruction.
That's incredible. Talk about a comeback story. But wait, there's more.
There's always more with volcanoes.
Some scientists believe that volcanoes might even hold the key to the origin of life itself.
Now, this is where things get really interesting. We're talking about hydrothermal vents.
Hydrothermal vents, those are like underwater geysers, right?
Exactly. They're found near volcanically active zones on the ocean floor, spewing out superheated water rich in all sorts of chemicals. And get this, around these vents, we find these crazy ecosystems teeming with life.
Hold on, you're telling me there's life thriving in these superheated, chemical-rich environments?
Yeah.
How is that even possible?
It's remarkable, right? Scientists believe that billions of years ago, similar conditions around these vents might have provided the spark for the very first life forms on Earth.
So from the ashes of destruction to the potential cradle of life, volcanoes really are full of surprises.
And that's just the beginning. Their influence on our planet and human history runs deep.
All right, so we've covered the basics of volcanoes, but now I want to rewind the clock way back. Let's talk ancient civilizations and how those fiery mountains played a role in their stories.
You know, it's fascinating how something so destructive could also be so influential in shaping the course of history.
Right, and there's no better place to start than with the Minoans and the eruption of Thera, also known as Santorini. Talk about a story for the ages.
Absolutely. We're talking about an eruption so massive, so catastrophic, that it's believed to have inspired the legend of Atlantis.
Okay, now that's a story I've heard before, but always thought it was, just a legend.
Well, the Minoans were a real civilization, and a powerful one at that. Imagine this thriving island civilization, a major naval power in the Mediterranean. They had beautiful cities, stunning art, and then boom, around 1600 BCE, Thera erupts with a force rarely seen in human history.
And this wasn't just your everyday volcanic eruption, right? This thing sent shockwaves throughout the entire Mediterranean world.
It was more like a cataclysmic event. We're talking massive tsunamis that devastated coastal settlements, volcanic ash raining down for hundreds of miles, and a volcanic winter that likely disrupted agriculture and trade for years to come.
Wow, it's hard to even fathom the scale of the destruction. But you mentioned Atlantis. What's the connection there? I'm dying to know.
So the Greek philosopher Plato described this advanced island civilization that vanished in a single day and night swallowed by the sea.
Sounds eerily familiar.
Right. While the existence of Atlantis is still debated, the timing and description are strikingly similar to what we know about the Thera eruption and its impact on the Minoans.
So you're saying it's possible that the legend of Atlantis was inspired by a real volcanic eruption. That's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
But even more than inspiring legends, this eruption had a major impact on the course of history, right? I mean, the Minoans were a major power. What happened after the eruption? Did they ever recover?
The Minoans were already significantly weakened by the eruption and its aftereffects. They were vulnerable, and their rivals, the Mycenaeans, saw an opportunity.
So it's like the saying goes, one civilization's disaster is another's opportunity.
Exactly. Eventually, the Mycenaeans absorbed the Minoan civilization, shifting the balance of power in the ancient world.
So one volcanic eruption might have changed the trajectory of ancient Greece. It's mind-boggling. Speaking of eruptions that captured the imagination, we have to talk about Pompeii. I mean, that story has captivated people for centuries.
It's a tale of tragedy, for sure, but it's also given us this incredible window into the past. The eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 CE buried Pompeii and Herculaneum under ash and debris, preserving them in a way that no historian could have ever dreamed of.
It's like someone hit the pause button on a Roman city. We can walk those streets, see the homes, the shops, even the remains of food and ovens.
It's haunting, but also amazing, and we learn so much from Pompeii. The everyday details of Roman life, their architecture, art, even their graffiti. It's a level of detail we don't have for many other ancient cultures.
It's a stark reminder of the power of volcanoes to both destroy and preserve. But before we move on from history-altering eruptions, we've got to talk about one more. Krakatoa in 1883. This one literally blew itself apart.
The Krakatoa eruption was absolutely deafening. The explosions were heard thousands of miles away, and the tsunamis it generated caused widespread devastation across the Indian Ocean.
That's just straight out of a disaster movie.
Oh, it was a disaster, no doubt. And like Thera and Vesuvius, Krakatoa's impact went far beyond its immediate destruction. Remember those atmospheric effects we discussed earlier?
You mean like volcanic winters?
Exactly. Krakatoa injected so much volcanic ash into the atmosphere that it affected sunsets around the world for years. Artists were inspired by those vibrant, almost surreal colors.
No way, really. I never knew that.
It's true. There are even theories that the eerie red sky in Edvard Munch's famous painting, The Scream, was inspired by the after effects of Krakatoa.
Wow, that's a detail I'd never heard before. It really highlights how these eruptions, as devastating as they are, can impact culture and art in unexpected ways.
Absolutely. And Krakatoa's reach didn't stop at art. It also had a measurable effect on global climate. The eruption caused a volcanic winter, similar to what we talked about with Thera, leading to a drop in global temperatures for several years.
And that takes us back to this recurring theme of volcanoes and their influence on Earth's climate. We've touched upon how they can cause these short-term volcanic winters. But what about their role in shaping our planet's climate over longer periods?
Now that's where things get really interesting. Remember how we talked about volcanoes forming at tectonic plate boundaries?
Right, like a ring of fire.
Exactly. Well, those boundaries are where Earth releases a lot of its internal heat. And that heat release, over millions of years, plays a crucial role in regulating Earth's climate.
So it's not just about the big explosive events, but also this constant interaction between Earth's interior and its atmosphere.
Exactly. Volcanoes are part of a much larger system that affects the entire planet's climate.
It's humbling and a little bit terrifying to realize how much power these geological giants wield. But it wasn't just climate that volcanoes shaped. There's a growing body of evidence suggesting they played a significant role in human evolution itself.
You're talking about the Toba eruption, right?
Bingo, the granddaddy of them all. The Toba supereruption, about 74,000 years ago, was a near-extinction event for our species.
It really puts things in perspective, doesn't it? Imagine this massive volcano in present-day Indonesia, erupting with a force thousands of times greater than Mount St. Helens.
Trying to wrap my head around that is giving me chills. How did anything survive an eruption of that magnitude?
It's a question that has puzzled scientists for years. The Toba eruption is believed to have plunged the planet into a volcanic winter, causing temperatures to plummet and potentially decimating entire ecosystems.
Talk about a bad hair day for the planet.
The theory is that only a small population of humans, maybe just a few thousand individuals, managed to survive this catastrophic event.
So everyone alive today is descended from that tiny group of survivors. Talk about a close call.
A close call indeed. And it makes you wonder, what if things had gone differently? But it wasn't just about surviving Toba, was it? Didn't volcanoes continue to shape our ancestors' lives long after that?
So it's not just one big event, but this constant interplay between humans and volcanoes.
Precisely. Imagine early humans constantly on the move, adapting to a world transformed by volcanic activity, from ash falls to changing climates to new landscapes created by eruptions. This constant pressure to adapt likely favored those who were quick-witted, resourceful, and cooperative.
So in a sense, volcanoes acted as this evolutionary pressure cooker, pushing our ancestors to become more adaptable and ultimately shaping the human species we are today.
Exactly. It's a reminder that our story, the story of humanity, is deeply intertwined with the story of volcanoes.
You know, it's one thing to talk about volcanoes as these sources of creation and change, but let's not forget about the flip side.
Right, the raw power of nature.
We've talked about how volcanoes have shaped our world, but they can also be incredibly destructive.
That's the duality, isn't it? Creation and destruction, two sides of the same coin.
And sometimes that destructive power can be hard to comprehend. I mean, look at Mount Pelée in 1902.
Mount Pelée, now that was a disaster.
It's a reminder that even with all our knowledge and technology, nature can still pack a punch.
Absolutely. We can study these volcanoes, monitor them, but predicting their every move is still a challenge.
And sometimes those eruptions are so fast, so powerful, that there's little time to react.
The pyroclastic flow that hit Saint-Pierre, it moved at hundreds of miles per hour,
Wiping out the entire city in minutes.
It's a stark reminder of how quickly things can change when you're dealing with these forces of nature.
And then there's Nevado del Ruiz in 1985, a tragedy compounded by human factors.
A tragic example of how important preparedness and heating warning signs can be.
The lahars, those volcanic mud flows that caught so many people off guard.
Even though there were signs of increased volcanic activity, a combination of factors hampered evacuation efforts.
Communication breakdowns, limited resources, even a lack of trust in the warnings. It's heartbreaking.
It highlights the importance of clear communication, robust infrastructure, and public trust in scientific expertise.
It's a lesson we need to keep learning, especially with the looming presence of supervolcanoes like Yellowstone.
Ah, Yellowstone, the big one. It's not a matter of if it will erupt again, but when.
And what an eruption that would be. The potential impact is global.
We're talking ash clouds, climate disruption, potential devastation on a continental scale. It's a sobering thought.
It's almost too big to imagine. But we're not just sitting ducks, are we?
Definitely not. We've come a long way in monitoring volcanic activity.
We have teams of scientists, cutting-edge technology, keeping a close eye on Yellowstone and other active volcanoes around the world.
Looking for any changes that could signal an impending eruption, ground deformation, gas emissions, even slight shifts in heat flow.
So like a giant high-tech volcanic early warning system.
Essentially, we're using science to understand these volcanoes better, to anticipate their behavior, and hopefully to mitigate their impact on human lives.
And it's not just about bracing for impact, right? We can also harness the power of volcanoes for good. Remember those hydrothermal vents?
You're talking geothermal energy.
Exactly. Volcanic regions are like untapped reservoirs of clean, renewable energy.
Iceland is a great example. They've really embraced geothermal energy, and it's a significant part of their energy portfolio.
It's proof that we can coexist with these powerful forces of nature, learn from them, and even benefit from them.
It all comes back to that duality we were talking about, the destructive and creative power of volcanoes. They can reshape our world in the blink of an eye, but they also hold the potential for a cleaner, more sustainable future.
What a journey it's been, from those fiery eruptions to their impact on civilizations, climate, even our very evolution. We hope this deep dive has opened your eyes to the incredible world of volcanoes.
It's been a pleasure sharing these insights with you. And who knows what other volcanic secrets are waiting to be unearthed.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and never stop being curious about the world around us.